What's up, guys? So we're here to go over UFC Vegas 75, Vettori versus Cannonier. But real first, we're going to go over the results for UFC Vegas 74. Uh, what should have been a not profitable night ended up being profitable. I'm sorry for all you guys who had money on Kai Kara France. He should have won that fight. He should have won the decision. I had a couple plays on Albazi, and because the judges screwed Kai Kara France, I came out okay. Um, but yeah, I mean that was a horrible decision in my opinion. And I had money on Albazi, so normally I would back my picks, but I legit you know thought Albazi lost that fight. So as you see here, I had two small underdog plays, one on Altamirano, one on Nurmagomedov. I picked a lot of dogs on this card. I think all of them won except for the two I put money on, so unfortunately. But these were two small bets. I had probably about $200 on each one. That was $400. I had a bunch of money invested in Kudalice. He didn't fight. I had probably like $2,500 wrapped up in Kudalice and Albazi and Kudalice parlay. Um, and then I had this the two-man parlay. Kudalice and Albazi ended up being just a play on Albazi because Kudalice didn't fight. So that covered my losses for the two underdog plays that didn't hit. And then the only reason I made any money was because of this two-man parlay here that I had made. I didn't post this one. That's why I screenshotted the ticket on my phone so I could show you guys that way, I'm not lying to you or whatever. Um, if I hit on anything, I print the tickets out so you can see them or whatever. I screenshot them. But so this is a Karine Silva and Amir Albazi. I don't know why it says Kleber Silva on Bovada, but whatever. There's a two-team parlay, and I got uh, $918 off of it. So I ended up coming out with like 300 or $400 profit on the event. Not as good as it has been the past weeks before this. I've been doing pretty damn good. So but yeah, man. And if you look at here, which I've already posted all this stuff on my Instagram and stuff, but if you look at this is my Tapology print off, which so the first three fights of the card were all underdogs that I picked, and all of them won. And then the Malarkey fight, this is one I didn't get right, but it was supposed to be Kudalice versus Malarkey, and Kudalice would have won, and I would have had that one right. Arlovsky, man, I really was beating myself up because whenever I give y'all parlays or I post my parlays for y'all to see, I put a lot of thought into them and stuff, and because y'all are going to be seeing them or whatever, and I'm pretty careful with who I put on there or whatever. But the ones that I don't post, like my big parlays and stuff, sometimes I'll just go through real quick and barely even look at it and just pick who I think. And there's no way I should have put Arlovsky on on one of mine, um, but I did. Just wasn't paying attention, just picking whoever. It was like a 10 fight parlay, and he ruined it for me. It would have hit. I think if he had if he. No, I think Nurmagomedov was on that one too, so maybe it wouldn't have hit. But I was kicking myself for that. I was like, why would I put Arlovsky on a parlay? And he was doing all right until he got caught. He's an old guy now. Who cares? He's a legend. And then like I said, Altamirano and Nurmagomedov were two underdog plays that didn't hit. I picked Jim Miller to win. I picked him to win originally against Jared Gordon, and then I still went with him here against his new opponent and picked Caceres, and I picked Albazi. I didn't think he won, man, but yeah, whatever, man. It's sucks really, but I'm glad that the judges screwed him on that because I wouldn't have made any money at all. I would have lost quite a bit of money if he hadn't won. But sorry for all you guys, man. I know a lot of you guys had Kai Kara France, and you were right. So, but yeah, man. This is first off, please like and subscribe for me. It would help me out a lot. What if you're new to the channel? What I do is I go through and I give all my picks for the card, and then at the end of the video, I give out my bets for the card. And if you don't want to watch the video and just want to see my picks and bets, you can go over to my Instagram, highkick_fight picks, and you can see it all on there. I also post them in the community tab for my channel. So if you're subscribed to my channel, that stuff will pop up on your feed and you'll see them. Um, and I'm available on Pandora, Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, iTunes, all that stuff. And what else? Um, yeah, this is a card, man, that to people who aren't like most of us, that I mean, if you're watching my channel, you're a big MMA fan. And if people aren't like us and they don't watch every fight and know all these guys, they'll look at this card and say, so what, but this card has the potential to be one of the best fight cards of the year as far as excitement and as far as finishes. There's a lot of good fights on this card, a lot of heavy hitters on this card. So it's going to be a very, very good card. I'm very excited for this one. It's going to be a good one. And yeah, man. So let's see what fights we lost real quick, because we lost Josh Emmett, Ilya Topuria. I think that got rescheduled. We lost Joshua Fremd versus Roman Kopylov. Whatever. I guess we haven't lost too many on this card yet, so I guess that's pretty cool. But who knows what'll change between now and then? All these cards seem to fall apart, before we get there. So, but yeah, let's get into the card. First up, we got Felipe Burns, or Felipe Buenas. I think that's how you say it. Versus Algas Zumagulov. I got his name down. And Felipe is 33 years old. He's 5'7" with a 71-inch reach. He is 13-6, and this is going to be his UFC debut. So yes, I'm not really sure why he's getting to skip the Contender Series and everything and jump right in. I mean, he is coming off a KO win in the LFA. Striking looks pretty good, fast hands. Hasn't fought anybody yet that I consider super high level. He fights in kind of a Muay Thai type style. He's got a lot of wins by submission on his record as well. He's 4-3 in his last 7 fights. So, like I said, I'm not really sure what to think, really. And I guess until we see him take on some better competition, I'm just curious as to why, they were giving him the shot. Because most of the time when people skip the Contender Series and stuff, they're on like a significant win streak or whatever. You go back and look at his losses. He got submitted 3 fights ago, and I don't know. Maybe he's a very exciting guy. Maybe I just don't know much about him. I was only able to find a few of his fights to watch the tape on. And he's taking on Zalgas Zumagulov. He is 34 years old. He's 5'4" with a 66.5-inch reach. And that guy's going to have, Buenas is going to have like a 4-inch reach advantage? No, 4.5-inch reach advantage. But yeah, Zalgas is, where was I at? 14-8 and 1-5 in the UFC. And I'm a big fan of this guy, and my heart goes out to him because he's had nothing but tough fights, and he's been at the wrong end of a couple of decisions that should have gone his way. If we go back and just look at his recent record here, his debut, was that his debut in Miro Albazi? It might have been. And that's a tough fight to have. I mean, on your debut, Albazi's tough. He ran through Jerome Rivera really quick. He fought Manel Kopp, who nobody wants to fight right now. Everybody's running from him. All of his opponents disappear before the fight starts. Jeff Molina, that was a very close fight, and even Jeff Molina, before they read the decision off, thought he lost that fight. He put his hands down, he started walking away, and they said his name, and he turned around with surprise. So that was a very close fight. It could have gone either way. And then the Charles Johnson fight, I thought he clearly won that fight. That was to me, that was even worse of a decision than than the Albazi fight, this weekend, because he clearly won the first 2 rounds. Charles Johnson came on in the third and landed some good shots, but I thought Zalgas clearly won that fight. And that's unfortunate, He's very talented. He has great striking, good wrestling, very fast, puts out a lot of volume. And he's fought the better competition by far out of these 2. And I definitely think this is a winnable fight for him. I think he'll be able to use his wrestling if he needs to in this fight. Zalgas has been fighting nothing but killers, man. And like I said, he should have won a few of those. And I'm going to take him to get the win here. Hopefully he gets back on track. I'm hoping, praying for him. And I'm going to take him to get the win here by decision. Next up, we got Ho Kang taking on Christian Quinones. And Kang is 35 years old, 5'9" with a 73-inch reach. He is 18-9 and 7-3-1 in the UFC. And yeah, Kang's very well rounded, kind of underrated. He really impressed me in his last fight, beating Bagdarel Dana. And he was just the sharper striker there, and he was using his jab very well and landing a lot of volume. He also has a decent grappling. He has 11 wins by submission on his record. He's gonna have a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight, and throws a lot of low calf kicks and kicks up the middle. He covers up really well when shots are coming at him. He has pretty good head movement, and his cardio checks out as well. And very good speed on his attacks. He's actually really good. I don't think a lot of people understand how good he is. And this is a fight that worries me. That's why I kind of wanted to go with Kang. Um, but I did decide to go the other way. But he's taking on Christian Quinones. He is 27 years old, 5'8", with a 70-inch reach. He is 18-3 and 1-0 in the UFC. So going into watching the tape on this guy, I'm being really cautious because first thing that jumps out at me is the guy he knocked out in his last fight. Went 1-4 in the UFC, and then this guy's got 10 wins by knockout on his record. That's very impressive. He fights well in the clinch. He has pretty good footwork as well. He uses his range very well, and I actually consider the guy he beat on the Contender Series to be a tougher guy than the guy he fought in his UFC debut, Long Xiao. That guy is actually pretty tough. And he uses a lot of movement on the feet. He jumps in and out of the pocket a lot and constantly moves. And he trains with Brandon Moreno, so he's at a good camp. He throws nice straight punches, and so does Kang also though. Um, and he cuts a lot of angles. Every time he throws a shot, he jumps back out of the pocket after he lands, so he's not there to be hit. I kind of want to pick Kang, like I said, but I think Quinones, wins in the striking, and Kang would probably have to use his grappling to get the win here. And this will be a very tough test for Quinones. But I'm going to take him to get the win by decision since Kang has never been finished recently. And should be an exciting fight, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than everybody's making it out to be because Kang's pretty tough and he's looked pretty good as of late. Aside from the bad loss to Ronnie Yaya, that was embarrassing, but Ronnie Yaya just pursued the takedowns constantly, and not a lot really happened in that fight, but they still gave it to Ronnie Yaya. So, but Kang is pretty tough. But I'm going to go with the younger guy here and say that he gets another win. Next up, we got Ronnie Lawrence taking on Daniel Argueta. And Ronnie Lawrence is 31 years old, 5'8", with a 70.5-inch reach. He is 8-2 and 2-1 in the UFC. And yeah, Ronnie's a very good wrestler. He constantly goes for takedowns, and he has very good cardio. He kind of had his own game used against him by Kakramanov in his last fight. He got out hustled and out wrestled. But Kakramanov is an amazing fighter, and I do not understand why the UFC let him go after one loss. I don't understand that at all. That guy is very talented, and he should be in the UFC. Um, but yeah, Ronnie uses constant pressure. It's his best weapon, his cardio and his pressure. He has very good ground and pound. He never stops moving. He's hard to hit, and eventually he will get you down. He has good submission defense. He's never been submitted. Very good leg kicks. He'll get guys so focused on stopping the takedowns, and that's when his striking will come into play, and he's able to catch guys with their hands down. Guys that aren't paying attention anymore because they're too worried about the takedown. And I expect him to come in looking better than ever after his last loss. That was pretty tough for him. But he is a very talented guy, man, and very talented wrestler. And I'm curious. Hmm. So Argueta, I didn't realize this before, but Argueta's last fight was at 145. And does does Argueta usually fight at featherweight all the time? I guess so. So I guess this is going to be Argueta's bantamweight debut. So we're going to have to worry about what he's going to look like there. Um, but Argueta is 29 years old, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. So Ronnie Lawrence is only going to have a half-inch reach advantage here, so not much. Argueta is 9-1 and 1-1 in the UFC. And yeah, he's a pretty good prospect. I don't put a whole lot of stock in his last win. That guy was debuting in the UFC, and Argueta may have better striking, but I'm not super confident in that. He has good jiu-jitsu, a lot of submission wins on his record, but I'm going with Lawrence, and the reason for that is if you go back and you look at the Damon Jackson fight Argueta had, he fights very similar to Ronnie Lawrence, and Jackson was able to get the win and control him and get the takedown. So I'm going to take Ronnie Lawrence to get the win by decision using his wrestling. Next up, we got Carlos Hernandez versus Dennis Bondar. And I'm very curious about this Bondar guy. Hernandez is 29 years old, 5'8" with a 67-inch reach. He's 8-2 and 1-1 in the UFC. He debuted against Victor Altamirano, and that was a very close fight. It could have gone either way. He has good boxing. He's very fast, and just because he got out grappled by Nascimento doesn't mean that he can't grapple good. Nascimento's a very talented grappler. Carlos has a ton of amateur experience as well, so I mean his small record doesn't really indicate the full amount of experience that he has. One thing to take into account when picking this fight is since Carlos has stepped up in competition. He's been in very close split decision fights. If you go back and look at the Contender Series fight, very close split decision win. The Altamirano fight, very close split decision win, and then the Nascimento fight didn't go his way. Um, so that's something to think about. He's never won by KO or TKO. He's got a few submission wins on his record, so his jiu-jitsu checks out. He throws a ton of volume. He has good scrambles to get back up to the feet. Decent takedowns. And it's just he's pretty good, man. But I mean, it's just the close fights are what worries me. How the judges are these days. He's taking on Dennis Bondar. He is 30 years old, 5'6" with a 69-inch reach. He is 16-4 and 0-1 in the UFC. He's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage, and so we really haven't got to see what this guy can do yet. In his debut, he broke his arm or some type of injury. He couldn't continue against Malcolm Gordon. He's got a ton of finishes on his record: 11 by sub, 5 by KO. I mean, it all comes down to really is that if you look at this guy's record, he hasn't really fought any high level competition. There's a lot of unknowns because of that. He has good submissions, pretty good double leg takedowns. It's hard to say that he's really good on the feet based on the competition that he's been taking on. In my opinion, this fight could possibly go either way because we don't know so much about Bondar. But I'm going to go with what I know, and I know that Carlos has fought the tougher competition, and I'll take him to get the win by decision because he hasn't got any finishes yet in the UFC or any finishes by TKO or whatever. And I think Bondar's got good enough submission defense that Carlos won't be able to submit him. But I wouldn't put money on this fight though, man. I'd be pretty hesitant in including this and stuff just because we don't know Bondar enough. Next up, we got Ronnie Barcelos taking on Miles Johns, and it's Howney Barcelos. I don't know why I call him Ronnie. Rowney. Barcelos is 36 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. He is 17-4 and 6-3 in the UFC. And Ronnie's very good, very very well rounded. This is a guy that had a really high ceiling back in the day, and he couldn't get the good fights that he needed, and he didn't fight as often as he should have. And now he's later into his career, and he appears. I don't know so much if it's that we've seen him slow down a bit, or it could be the case to where it's just, Umar Nurmagomedov is very good, and it made Barcelos, look bad. Barcelos has never been knocked out before, and Umar caught him. Barcelos has amazing Muay Thai, hard calf kicks. He has a freestyle wrestling background. He competed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments and judo tournaments. He had black belts in both judo and Jiu-Jitsu by the time he was 20 years old. He throws really good combinations. I like how he'll throw the straight right, and then he'll come over the top at the head kick right behind it. Um, he also does very well in the clinch up against the cage. He's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. And, Howney is the more skilled fighter here, all the way around, in my opinion. But coming off of his first KO loss, how is he going to look this late in his career, and he's taking on Miles Johns. He is 29 years old, 5'7" with a 66-inch reach. He is 13-2 and 4-2 in the UFC. And yeah, this guy's got a lot of potential. He has big power. It's worrying. It's worrying to put money on him, because he often doesn't throw a lot of volume. He tends to slow down a bit, and but his power does carry over into the third round. He had 2 third-round finishes recently. He's got a wrestling background. He just doesn't ever use it, and probably because he would gas out, I'm guessing, is why he doesn't like to push the wrestling very much. If he pushed a real tough wrestling pace, I'm sure he would probably be pretty gassed out because he's pretty big and muscular for for his size. And his last fight against Vince Morales, I honestly thought he could have lost that. The judges gave it to him, but I had money on him, and I was kind of disappointed in his performance. So I kind of I guess I'm pretty critical, when I think about that fight. So um, he's very explosive and powerful. Kind of one dimensional though, man. He doesn't throw a lot of kicks. He likes to counter, and it's just he lays back too much and kind of waits for the perfect opportunity, and sometimes he gets it. And but he hasn't been fighting very tough competition. If you look at it, Khalid Taha, Timur Valiev, that was a tough fight. Uh, and he actually went to decision with him, so that is kind of impressive. But Victor Henry. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong person. Duh. uh, he got knocked out by Mario Batista. We're talking about Miles Johns. I was over there on Ronnie Barcelos. Um, Batista knocked him out. Kevin Natividad and Anderson Dos Santos. I don't know that those guys are even with the promotion anymore. He lost to John Castaneda and Vince Morales his last time out. Went to a decision with him. I don't think Morales is with the promotion anymore either. And so Howney should win this fight. He's better everywhere. But it's just a worrying thing. And are we holding on to what used to be with him? I guess we're gonna see. I think Ronnie is better everywhere the fight goes, and I think he should win. But it's kind of like just risky, man. I know Ronnie's over at minus 200 favorite, and that's kind of risky with a guy coming off his first knockout loss. That hasn't actually been on a very good run lately, unfortunately. Um, but I'm taking Ronnie, to get the win. I'm probably going to stay away from this fight money wise, unless just like the Hail Mary parlay, I might put him on there. I think if he wins, I think he could. Win by third round knockout. Um, Miles in the past has been hurt to the body quite a few times. I believe John Castaneda did that to him. And as hard as Ronnie kicks and punches, I could see him getting John's, in the third round when he's tired and hurting him. So I'll take him to win by third round TKO. Next up, we got Modestas Bukauskas taking on Zach Plaga. Grab some water. Excuse me. And Modestas is 29 years old, 6'3" with a 78-inch reach. He is 14-5 and 2-3 in the UFC. And what the hell happened there? Oh, I see what I did. 2-3 in the UFC. So this is his second run in the UFC. He looked good. In his first fight back against Tyson Pedro, he was a big underdog in that fight. Um, sorry. Before he was cut from the UFC, he while he was cut, sorry. Uh if I could talk right, I'll get on with it. So while he was cut from the UFC, he went and won the Cage Warriors light heavyweight title, and so I guess that's impressive, And he looked like he'd made a lot of improvements in those fights. He stands real heavy on his lead leg, which can make him available for leg kicks, and we've seen him eat a lot of those in his fights. But he seems to have tightened a lot of things up. Doing my research, I see why the UFC signed him in the first place. Before the UFC, he had 11 wins by finish. Almost all of his wins at that point, I think it was all of his wins at that point, have been by finish. And he has big power in his hands. I noticed he's been throwing a lot more kicks, at least in his past two fights, and switching stances a lot more, making himself harder to hit. He mainly beat Pedro with his superior conditioning, and Pedro really didn't look good in that fight. He looked like he was very tired right after the first round. Modestas is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. He's very fast for a big guy. His head movement has looked a lot improved. I believe he's a minus 175 favorite right now, which is kind of shocking to me, and I'll get into why. But he's taking on Zach Plaga. He is 35 years old, 6'2" with a 76-inch reach. He is 6-1 and 1-1 in the UFC. Um, his last fight, all he did was hold Jordan right up against the cage and throw little punches and elbows, but he did bust right up doing that. He got the win, but nobody really wants to see that. This may be a fight where we finally see what Modestas' grappling is like. And when we did see Zach strike, on the Tough Show and stuff, he had very good boxing, threw a lot of volume, he showed good footwork. It all really depends on his game plan here. I mean, I don't think Modestas should be that big of a favorite here. This could be a very close fight, in my opinion. We haven't really seen Zach kind of throw hands at light heavyweight yet. He's just kind of smothered his opponent up against the cage, but he did dominate that fight, so you can't really take it from him. I don't understand what all the one sidedness is. Everybody on Tapology, I believe, is going with Modestas. Yeah, 85%. And yeah, man, it's if you can't tell, I like to kind of poke holes in all the shit everybody thinks and try to find my own narrative. And I just don't understand that because if Modestas hadn't beat Pedro and this was his first fight back, he would be an underdog here, and no doubt about it. And Pedro didn't look like himself in that fight, honestly either. So I don't understand the heavy lean towards Bukauskas in this direction, in this spot. Um, I do want Modestas to win, but if I feel this fight could go either way, I would rather pick the dog and Paga. Maybe he'll smother Modestas up against the cage as well and tire him out, or maybe he gets the takedowns. He has a very good cardio. Um, I wouldn't put money on this fight, but yeah, man, I don't understand what all the faith is suddenly on Modestas because before when he was in the UFC, everybody counted him out. He came back and got one win over Tyson Pedro, and Pedro didn't look good in that fight, and now he's a almost 100% favorite. Uh, I'll take the shot on Paga, and I'll probably have him mixed in a big parlay, but not going to get invested in him as far as straight up, or anything like that. But could definitely be a lot closer fight than everybody's making it out to be. Next up, we got Teresa Belfort taking on Gabriel Fernandez, and Teresa is 21 years old, and she's young. 21 years old, 5'9", with a 71-inch reach. She is 6-1 and 0-1 in the UFC. So the first thing that jumps off the page at me is she's very tall and long for the weight division, the weight class, and she's going to have a 3.5-inch reach advantage. She's also very young. She's going to be constantly improving. She fights very well in the clinch. She put up a good fight against Natalia Silva before she got caught with that spinning kick, and showed good grappling. She was able to get a takedown or two. She had Silva in a triangle choke at one point until the end of the round. And Bledsoe had a pretty long amateur career as well, so her record doesn't really indicate all the experience that she has. Um, but yeah, she's a very talented grappler and wrestler. That's her bread and butter, and that could serve her well in this spot. Um, and she's taking on Gabriel Fernandez. She is 29 years old, 5'6", with a 67.5-inch reach. She's 8-2 and 0-1 in the UFC as well. She's a tough woman. She has good jiu-jitsu, has some submission wins on her record. She's a very good striker. That's where she's best. Throws a lot of kicks. And if this fight stays on the feet, it's Fernandez all day. She's very good striker. I guess the piece of information we need is Bleda as good of a grappler as Jazdavicius was, because Jazdavicius was able to out-grapple Fernandez and control her the entire fight. And this is another fight I feel could go either way, man. It's kind of a similar fight as the one Bleda's had, before, a tough Brazilian striker. I see why everybody's picking Belfort because her grappling is her strong suit, and I kind of want to pick Fernandez mostly because everyone is picking Belfort, but but I'm gonna go with the grappling of Belfort as well, and take Belfort to win by decision. Wouldn't be surprised if Fernandez knocks her out or something though. I mean, she is a very good striker, but maybe the safest bet for this fight would be the over 1.5 or over 2.5. Um, rather than try to bet this fight straight up. Next up, we got Jimmy Flick taking on Alessandro Costa. And Jimmy Flick is 32 years old. He is 5'7" with a 70.5 inch reach. He is 16-6 and 1-1 in the UFC. And Flick has world class jiu-jitsu. He's got 14 wins by submission on his record. He's never won a fight by KO or TKO. He has lost 5 fights by knockout though. He came into the UFC and got that flying triangle win over Cody Durden, but he was really getting beat up in that fight before he landed the triangle. And then he decided to retire and was out 2 years and jumped in on short notice and got finished, very very easily by Charles Johnson. Jimmy's going to have a height and reach advantage in this spot, 3.5 inch reach advantage, but he's not much of a striker at all. He does get hit a lot. It's hard to go with a guy, I feel is like only good at submissions, but doesn't really have the wrestling to get it to the ground. There's not much more I could say about him other than that. I know he had a lot of hype on him one point supposedly, but I was never really that high on him. But yeah, but he's taking on Alessandro Costa. He is 27 years old, 5'4" with a 67-inch reach. He is 12-3 and 0-1 in the UFC. And this guy's pretty talented, man. I'm sure he's going to look even better, after losing his fight on short notice to Albazi in his debut. I mean, it's a tough fight, to take on your debut. He has very good submissions, some knockout wins on his record. And I'll keep it pretty short on this one, man. I don't think Costa should have any trouble keeping this fight on the feet and finishing Jimmy Flick by KO. I'll take him to get the win by KO in round two. If you're taking Jimmy, if you really are confident enough in him, I would say take him by sub. That's the only way he can win this fight, I believe. I just don't see him being able to get Costa down. So next up, we got Pat Sabatini taking on Lucas Almeida. And Pat Sabatini is 32 years old. He's 5'8" with a 70-inch reach. He is 17-4 and 4-1 in the UFC. And yeah, Pat's a very good grappler, great jiu-jitsu. In my opinion, the win over Jamal Emmers was, his best win in his career so far. The other one's really not all that impressive. Tucker Lutz, we found out, isn't very good at all. TJ Laramie never won a fight in the UFC. And Pat got murdered by Damon Jackson his last time out. He was a big favorite in that spot too. So Pat is really good with like trips and stuff like that. That's how he gets most of his takedowns. But he does have a good double leg as well. But he will hold guys up against the cage and just sit there and try to trip them up constantly until he gets a takedown if he can't get the double leg. And that's I can't say much for his striking, man. It's not his best skill. His best skill is his wrestling and his submissions. Lots of people are very high on him. I mean, he's a pretty big favorite in this spot, I believe. Um, but yeah, not so sure. He's taking on Lucas Almeida. He is 32 years old, 5'11" with a 71-inch reach. He's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. He's 14-1 and 1-0 in the UFC. And yeah, this guy's very underrated, man. He's very good, an excellent striker with 9 wins by knockout on his record, 5 by submission. I think all of his wins are by finish. He's very exciting. Um, this guy loses one fight, to a guy that's proven to be pretty good. On the Contender Series, he lost to Daniel Zellhuber, and everyone's counting him out all of a sudden. But everything that he throws is powerful, man, and he hits very hard. He's very fast with his strikes. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Um, on the feet, he has a clear advantage for sure. He fights well in the clinch, and I'm willing to take the dog shot on Almeida here. He's a plus 150 underdog. If Jackson can knock Pat Sabatini out, Lucas definitely can, in my opinion. Um, as long as he can get away from the takedowns and keep it on the feet, I think he can. I think he can finish Pat Sabatini. I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to agree with me on that, but y'all know I like my dog shots. So next up, we got Christian Leroy Duncan taking on Armand Petrosian. And Duncan is 27 years old. He is 6'2" with a 79-inch reach. He is 8-0 and 1-0 in the UFC. And Duncan is an amazing kickboxer, tons of finishes on his record. He hasn't lost as a pro, but he did have a very long amateur career, like 23 fights. He was 17-5 as an amateur. Lots of power, very well rounded. Uses a lot of push kicks and high kicks. Has a very nice, powerful, like straight left that he hurts guys with. He switches stances a lot, and he'll use that to set up his spin kicks. And yeah, he seems to have pretty good takedown defense. We haven't seen much of his ground game at a high level yet, but I'm very aware of this guy. Even before the UFC. I've been watching him on Cage Warriors and for some time, and he's going to have a crazy 8-inch reach advantage here, which is, I was a little disappointed we didn't get to see more of him in his debut. That fight was stopped, because his opponent was injured, had a knee injury in the fight. But I think Duncan would have won that fight anyway. And this is a very fan friendly fight. I like both these guys. They're both very skilled strikers. It's going to be a very exciting fight. And he's taking on Armand Petrosian. He is 32 years old, 6'3" with a 71-inch reach, and he is 7-2 and 2-1 in the UFC. And yeah, Armin, he has a kickboxing background. He's a great striker. His debut was a war that he had against Gregory Rodriguez, RoboCop. Um, it's a real tough guy, man, to fight in your debut, and it was a close fight. And he ended up getting the decision. Um, he's got a lot of knockout wins, throws a lot of calf kicks, very fast hands, goes to the body a lot with his punches. He's very explosive. He has pretty good footwork. He can fight well on his back foot. If guys are walking him down, that's how he was fighting Rodriguez, and he was able to land some very good shots. Um, but he does fight better whenever he's the one pushing forward, in my opinion, and walking down his opponent. But I think that's true for both of these guys. This fight is going to take place on the feet, man. And, Armin has struggled with grappling in the past, but I don't think he's going to have to worry about that in this fight. So I wouldn't get crazy invested in this fight. They're both great strikers. Anything could happen, but I'm leaning towards Duncan to get the win here. Um, I don't know if Armand's ever been finished, so I'm going to take Duncan to get the win by decision. Next up, we got Nicholas Mata taking on Manuel Torres. And Mata is 30 years old. He's 5'9" with a 70.5-inch reach. He's 13-4 and 1-1 in the UFC. And this guy's very tough, man. He hits very hard. He had a lot of hype coming into the UFC, and then he got knocked out by Jim Miller, and everybody started kind of counting him out. Um, he got the KO over Van Camp last time out, but Camp was coming in there with his chin just straight up in the air, man. And I don't think Torres will be making those kinds of mistakes. Mata has very fast hands, good combinations, good boxing. Um, everyone's going with Torres. I don't understand the one-sidedness of this one either. These guys are both fairly new, and they both like to strike. Anything could happen. This is a risky fight to bet on, but I don't know. I think, well, I'll get into that in a minute, but Mata throws everything into every shot, and I could see him having cardio issues late into the fight if it gets there. But other than that, he looks pretty solid on the feet. He's taking on Manuel Torres. He is 28 years old, 5'10", with a 73-inch reach. He is 13-2 and 1-0 in the UFC. And I really like Manuel's style, in his boxing. He had a big KO win in his debut, but if you look at who he was fighting, you can't say you're super confident because Camacho had been knocked out a lot, so. But Manuel did look amazing in that fight. He's the taller guy here. He's going to have a 2.5-inch reach advantage in this fight. I think Torres, has the slicker striking of the two of these guys, and he uses more kicks as well. He fights pretty well in the clinch with the dirty boxing. I think he's definitely the faster one of these two as well. I do worry about his striking defense a bit. He does get hit quite a bit, but he's never been knocked out, so whatever. And he puts out a good amount of volume, and I'm going to be going with Manuel here to get the win. But this is going to be a crazy fight. Anything could happen, so um, I'll take him to get the win by first round KO. Next up, we got Muslim Salikov taking on Nicholas Dalby. Muslim is 39 years old, 5'11", with a 70-inch reach. He is 19-3 and 6-2 in the UFC. And yeah, this guy's a veteran, man. He's an amazing striker. I thought he might have been on his way out after the way he looked in the Leach fight, but he came back from that. And, he looked amazing against Fiallo. He took some damage in the first round, and he was able to come back and use his wrestling. Which isn't something he typically does, but he was able to use his wrestling and tire Fiallo out, and then get the finish in the third round. He has 12 wins by knockout. He's getting up there in age, but his cardio did look way better in his last fight, man. He got the knockout in the third round, so. He looked a lot better than he did in the Leach fight. He throws great kicks to all levels, lots of spinning attacks. Like Like I said, he can wrestle if he needs to, but his bread and butter is his striking. He had over 200 kickboxing matches. Um, the only thing that worries me really about him is he's just getting up there in age, but he doesn't show a lot of losses in his MMA career. So probably been in some wars, but more than often than not, he wins those wars. So he's taking on Nicholas Dalby. He is 38 years old. He's getting up there in age too. 5'11" with a 74.5-inch reach. He's going to have a 4.5-inch reach advantage, which is pretty significant. He's 21-4-1, and I like Dalby, man, but he hasn't looked good as of late to me. His last fight, I thought he lost that fight, but really neither of those guys in that fight looked good. Who was that? Worley Alves that he fought? Yeah, it was Worley Alves. Yeah, neither of those guys really looked all that good. But I thought Worley won that fight, and I don't think Dalby's going to be able to get Muslim down, and Muslim is way better on the feet, and Dalby's never been knocked out, so you know, um, there's always a chance that Dalby could win the fight if Muslim gasses out and Dalby takes over, in the later two rounds. Um, but I think Muslim's cardio looked better enough that he'll be able to go out there and win at least the first two rounds. Um, and I'm going to take him to get the win by decision just because Dalby's never been finished. But it could get risky, man. If it makes it, if he starts slowing down in the middle of the second round, Dalby could take over and get a finish, in the third. So be wary of that. But I think Muslim's got this. Next up, we got Armand Sarukian taking on Joaquim Silva, and Armand is 26 years old, 5'7", with a 72.5-inch reach. He is 19-3 and 6-2 in the UFC. And yeah, we all know what the deal is with this guy. He's an amazing wrestler and grappler with great submissions. His striking's looked a lot better as well. He's got pretty big power in his hands when he uses them. I don't really understand this fight. Maybe nobody will fight Armand, so he just took whatever, trying to stay busy. But this guy is way below him, in my opinion. Armand should be fighting top 5 guys or probably top 10 at least, and he's going to have a 3.5-inch reach advantage, man. And I don't think there's a whole lot I really have to say on this one, but I think everybody's with me on this. But Joaquim Silva is 34 years old, 5'8", with a 69-inch reach. He is 12-3 and 5-3 in the UFC. And yeah, this guy lost to Ricky Glenn. He got knocked out by Ricky Glenn very quickly. So that's really all I should have to say. But and he then he beat Jesse Ronson, which is not somebody that's done well in the UFC at all. And he gets Armand, which makes no sense at all to me. But he's very powerful. He's usually in fun fights. He's very exciting to watch. But I don't think he stands a chance against the wrestling of Armand. And aside from a puncher's chance, I don't really see him getting the win here in any way, or really having the advantage anywhere. I got to go with Armand to get the win. I'm going to say by round 3 submission, or maybe second round ground and pound, whichever you want to go with. Next up, we got the main event, man. Marvin Vettori taking on Jared Cannonier. And Marvin is 29 years old. He's 6 foot tall with a 74-inch reach. He's 19-5-1 and 9-4-1 in the UFC. And yeah, Marvin's very good, man. He's been around the top of the division for a long time now. He's only lost to the champ and Robert Whitaker, I believe. Let's look at his record. That way I'm not. See, so he lost to Robert Whitaker. He lost to Israel Adesanya. And he lost to Israel Adesanya a long time ago. Oh, and he lost to Antonio Carlos Jr. at the beginning of his career in the UFC. So, yeah, pretty much only the best guys in the division have beat him. And, he's got good striking, pretty good wrestling, when he wants to use it. The only bad thing I can really say is that he doesn't get a lot of finishes. At least he hasn't gotten any in the UFC. And I think he's going to put out the better volume of these two guys. Probably have the better footwork. Yeah, I think he's probably better fucking everywhere the fight goes for the most part. But he's taking on Jared Cannonier. He's 39 years old, 5'11", with a 77.5-inch reach. So he's going to have a 3.5-inch reach advantage. He's 16-6 and 9-6 in the UFC. And Jared Cannonier is really tough, man. But he has big power. He could always catch Marvin. But I think Marvin's better everywhere the fight goes here. I think Marvin's going to land, the volume. I think he's, Jared doesn't throw a lot of kicks, man. He doesn't put out a lot of volume. Sometimes, sometimes he kind of beats himself, man, because he'll go out there and not throw a lot of volume and kind of wait, and like he did when he fought Adesanya, he didn't went out there and just didn't do anything. And it's a pretty easy fight for Adesanya to win, man, and he just didn't do anything. And I mean, here's what bothers me about all of this stuff in the middleweight division, man, is that I really respect Marvin Vettori as a fighter and what he's done in the sport. But I'm tired of seeing the same shit. I don't want to see Vettori versus Adesanya 3 or Cannonier versus Adesanya 2. I want to see some new stuff in the division, man. And that's I do want to see Robert Whitaker fight him again. Um, but that's why I was so excited that and I was okay with them bringing Alex Pereira in and him only winning a few fights and jumping up and fighting Adesanya because we've been seeing just the same people fighting over and over again at a lot of the top of these divisions, man, and it's it gets old. I mean, I don't think anybody really wanted to see Panay versus Nunes 3. Even though they had it scheduled. And I don't know. It's just a whole lot of guys fighting each other over and over again, and nobody else is getting a shot, man. So, uh, but I'm taking Marvin Vettori to get the win. I don't think he's going to finish Jared Cannonier. So I take him to win by decision. And he's got the cardio to go 5 rounds, and he'll overwhelm Jared with the volume and stuff. But there's always a chance Jared could catch him. Uh, but yeah, man, that's it as far as my picks go. As far as my bets, there was another one I wanted to add, and I forgot about it. Oh yeah, well, I haven't put it in yet, but I'm thinking about it. Gotta write that down. Got to add Costa into some of my parlays. Let me see what he is right now. Yeah, he's a minus 230, man. That's a heavy price. Well, I'll mix him into the parlays. I'll add him to my final one real quick before I put this in. Add Almeida. Sorry, I'm doing this, making y'all listen to it. Um, Costa. All right. So, as far as my single plays go, I've got a play on. I don't have a whole lot of money on this card, man. There's a lot of fights that I feel like could go either way, so I don't have a whole lot of money on any of these. I've got a half unit on Ronnie Lawrence at minus 145. I've got a quarter unit on Lucas Almeida at plus 155. Um, and I have a, two-man parlay of Sarukian and Duncan, and that's minus 115. I got a half unit on that. Um, and then as far as other parlays, I took Tarzukian and Duncan, and I added Torres and Salikov. That's plus 350. Didn't put a whole lot on that, just $100. And then I added to that Lawrence and Vettori. That's plus 1,000, 1,184. So 1,184. And then I added Almeida and Costa, and that's a plus 4,598. And then I'll of course have like a Hail Mary parlay or whatever, but you guys can go through my picks and figure that out yourself. Um, but yeah, man, I appreciate everybody. Please like and subscribe, man. No one won the contest again, so if you guys feel like participating in the contest to try to win an autographed Donald Cerrone, autographed Demetrius Johnson, autographed Killer Miller glove, or an autographed Holly Holm, it's just the glove is the Killer Miller. The other ones are just pictures that are autographed. If you want to win one of those, all you got to do is it's for this card for UFC Vegas 75. You pick 3 winners, and you got to pick the method of victory and what round. And you can only do one decision. So the other 2 fights have to be submission or knockout. And you have to tell me submission or knockout, and what round. And I know it's tough, but nobody ever participates. Only a few people do. So, whatever, man. So if anybody wins, I'll just comment on this video, man. I'll keep track of it. And what else? Uh, up over 250 subscribers. I appreciate it, man. Thank all you guys for watching. And hopefully we have a good week this week, man. And that's it for me, man. I'm out of here. Y'all have a good one.